The mob boss handed her a wedding dress and said, "Put it on. We're getting married in an hour." But what would you do if the man you feared was the only one standing between you and death? Evie Carter came to a quiet coastal town in Maine for one reason: sell her late mother's old mansion and go back to her safe, predictable life. She expected dust paperwork and bad memories. She did not expect Roman Hale, a powerful man with blood on his hands, secrets in his eyes, and a war waiting outside her door. This is not just a love story. It is a story about buried family sins, dangerous desire, and the moment survival becomes a vow. Stay until the end, because the truth behind that wedding dress changes everything. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. A week before Roman Hale placed that wedding dress on the bed, Evie Carter believed her life still belonged to her. She believed in locked doors, clean paperwork, early flights, and plans written neatly in black ink. She believed that grief could be folded, packed, and carried like a sweater at the bottom of a suitcase. She believed that if she stayed calm long enough, nothing inside her would break loud enough for anyone to hear. Chicago was gray that morning, the kind of gray that turned windows into mirrors. Evie stood in her apartment with one suitcase open on the bed and a stack of legal documents spread across the comforter. Her late mother's name appeared on every page: Claire Bellamy Carter. Even on paper, the name felt distant. Beautiful, cold, and difficult to reach. Evie ran her thumb over the signature line. Her mother's handwriting had always been elegant. Sharp loops, clean pressure, no hesitation. Even signing away the last pieces of herself, Claire had managed to look controlled. The laptop on the dresser chimed. Evie glanced over. Jenna. Pierce's face filled the screen, barefaced, coffee in hand, concern already sitting between her brows. "You look like you're packing for a funeral," Jenna said. Evie folded a cream sweater and placed it in the suitcase. "I already went to the funeral." "That is exactly the kind of answer that makes me worry about you." Evie smiled without meaning it. "I'm fine." Jenna stared at her through the screen. "You say that like it's a professional diagnosis. It's an accurate one. It's a defensive one." Evie paused with a pair of jeans in her hands. Jenna was not a therapist, but she had known Evie long enough to recognize when she was turning herself into a case file. Evie placed the jeans in the suitcase. "I'm going to Maine. I'm meeting the realtor. I'm looking at the house and I'm selling it. That's all. The house your mother never told you about." Evie zipped the side pocket too hard. "She told me she grew up near the coast." She said that once, after 2 glasses of wine, and then changed the subject when you asked which coast. Evie looked toward the window. Traffic moved below in slow, silver lines. The city looked steady from above, as if every person down there knew exactly where they belonged. Evie had spent years building that illusion for herself. A good apartment, a good education, a respectable job as a trauma therapist, clients who trusted her, colleagues who admired her control, a life with no loose wires hanging from the ceiling. Then her mother died and left her a mansion on the coast of Maine. A mansion. Evie almost laughed when the attorney first said it. Claire Carter, who wore the same wool coat for 12 years and clipped coupons in a drawer, had owned a cliffside property in a town called Harbor Point. Evie had never heard of Harbor Point. Not from her mother. Not once. "I'll be gone 2 weeks," Evie said. "Maybe less." Jenna leaned closer to the camera. "You keep saying that, but what if the house needs work? Then I'll sell it as is. What if it's worth more repaired? Then I'll make a rational decision based on numbers." "Evie." "What?" Jenna softened. "What if being there hurts?" That question slipped under Evie's skin. She closed the suitcase with slow, careful hands. "Then it hurts in Maine instead of Chicago." Jenna did not smile. Evie carried the suitcase off the bed and set it by the door. "I need the money. If the sale goes well, I can finally leave the clinic and open my own practice. No more hospital politics. No more Dr. Mercer acting like my ideas are his ideas with better lighting." Jenna raised her brows. "So this is about freedom." Evie looked back at the documents. "No, it's about real estate." Jenna's expression said she did not believe her. Evie did not blame her. 3 hours later, Evie stood in an airport security line with a carry on a black coat over her arm and a pulse that refused to settle. By late afternoon, she was in a rental car driving along the coast of Maine. The farther she drove from Portland, the narrower the roads became. Pine trees crowded the highway. The sky lowered. Fog slid between dark trunks like something alive. Harbor Point appeared without ceremony. One moment there were woods and stone walls. The next, the road curved and opened to the Atlantic. The ocean was not blue, it was iron. Waves struck black rocks below steep cliffs. White houses with widow's walks sat high above the water, their windows shining gold in the fading light. Boats moved in the harbor like shadows pulled by invisible strings. Everything looked old, expensive, and watchful. Evie slowed as she entered town. A sign welcomed her to Harbor Point in painted navy letters. Below it, someone had placed fresh flowers near the base. She did not know why that unsettled her. The town center was small but polished. A bakery with warm windows, a hardware store, a church with a white steeple, a marina lined with private slips. Men in weatherproof jackets stood outside a coffee shop and stopped talking when her rental car passed. Evie checked the address again. Bellamy House sat at the end of a private road called Mariner's Rise. The road climbed above town, winding along the cliffs. Wind pushed against the car hard enough to make the frame shudder. When she reached the iron gate, she stopped breathing for a second. The house stood beyond a long gravel drive, enormous, and weather-worn, its gray shingles dark with salt and age. Tall windows faced the sea. One shutter hung crooked. Ivy crawled up the stone foundation. Grass had grown wild along the path, bending under the wind. Behind the main house, stone steps cut down the cliff toward a private dock. It was not charming. It was not peaceful. It looked like a secret that had survived longer than the people who made it. A man waited by the gate in a tan coat, holding a folder against his chest. He lifted a hand as Evie got out. Evelyn Carter. Evie. Caleb Ross. Ross Coastal Realty. His handshake was firm, but his palm was damp. Evie noticed. She noticed most things. Caleb looked past her shoulder toward the road before unlocking the gate. Long trip. Manageable. That's one word for Chicago to Harbor Point. They walked up the drive together. Gravel crunched beneath their shoes. The wind smelled like salt-wet leaves and something metallic. Evie kept her eyes on the house. My mother grew up here. Caleb hesitated. Partly. Evie looked at him. What does that mean? It means families like the Bellamys had more than one place. The Bellamys. He glanced at her. That was your mother's family name. I know what it was. Right, of course. He looked embarrassed, then nervous again. Evie stopped near the porch steps. Why does everyone in town act strange when that name comes up? Caleb gave her a practiced smile. Small towns have long memories. That's not an answer. No, he said quietly. It's not. Before she could press him, he opened the front door. The smell hit first. Dust, old wood, cold stone. A closed-up house that had been waiting in silence. Inside the entry hall rose 2 stories. A curved staircase swept along the wall. A chandelier hung above, dull with dust. Sheets covered furniture in the sitting room. The floors were scratched but beautiful. On the far wall, a massive portrait watched over the hall. Evie stepped closer. A family stood inside a painted room. Men in dark suits. Women in pearls. Children with serious faces. At the center was a teenage girl with auburn hair and hazel eyes. Evie's throat tightened. Her mother. Claire looked younger than Evie had ever imagined her. Not cold, not yet. Her expression was guarded, but there was something wild in her eyes, something caught between defiance and fear. Evie stared until Caleb cleared his throat. That portrait came with the house. I can see that. You can remove it, of course. Evie did not answer. They toured the rooms. A library with water-damaged shelves. A dining room with a cracked ceiling. A kitchen that needed full renovation. Bedrooms with old wallpaper peeling at the seams. Every room was bigger than Evie expected, and colder than it should have been. At the back of the house, French doors opened onto a terrace overlooking the Atlantic. Below, the private dock reached into dark water. To the right, near the cliff path, stood a small guest cottage. Evie pointed. That's livable. Caleb followed her gaze. Barely. But yes, better than the main house actually. Smaller systems, less damage. How much is the property worth right now? Caleb breathed in through his nose. As is, maybe 900,000. Maybe less if a buyer wants to punish the repairs. Evie turned toward him. And repaired. Depending on the market, 4 million. Possibly more with the private dock. The number moved through Evie like cold water. 4 million meant the clinic. It meant independence. It meant no more asking permission from senior doctors who smiled while taking credit for her work. Caleb saw her calculating. There is another option, he said. What option? Summer rental, short term. Someone wealthy wants privacy, you let them take the main house for a couple months. Use the money to start repairs. You stay in the cottage and oversee the work. Evie looked back at the ocean. How much? For the right tenant, a lot. She should have said no immediately. Instead, she heard herself ask, how fast could you find someone? Caleb's phone rang before sunrise the next morning. Evie had spent the night in a motel near the harbor because the house had no heat and half the windows did not lock. The motel room smelled like bleach and old carpet. She had slept in her clothes badly. When the phone buzzed on the nightstand, she woke with her heart already racing. Caleb's voice came fast. I have a tenant. Evie sat up. What? For the main house. 2 months. Cash. Serious buyer energy, though he says rental first. You need to come now. It's 7 in the morning. He's already there. Evie threw on yesterday's sweater, pulled her hair into a loose knot, and drove too quickly up Mariner's Rise. The iron gate was open when she arrived. That alone made her angry. She parked behind a black SUV with tinted windows. Then another, then a third. Her stomach tightened. This was not a family looking for a summer rental. She stepped through the gate and walked fast along the overgrown path. Caleb, she called. No answer. The grass was wet from morning fog. Her boot caught on a broken stone. The world tipped. For one suspended second, Evie saw the ground coming up gray and hard and stupidly close. Then hands caught her waist. Not grabbed. Caught. Strong, certain. Warm through the wool of her sweater. Her palms landed against a man's chest. Solid. A heartbeat moved beneath her fingers, slow and steady. Nothing like hers. Evie looked up. The man, holding her, was tall, dressed in a dark coat over a charcoal shirt with black hair pushed back by the wind and eyes the color of storm glass. His face was beautiful in a way that felt almost insulting. Straight nose, sharp jaw, a faint scar near his mouth. He looked expensive, calm, and completely unsurprised by danger. His hands remained at her waist half a second too long. Careful, he said. His voice was low, American. East Coast maybe with something rougher underneath. Evie pulled back. I had it. His gaze dropped briefly to the stone she had tripped over. Of course. The words were polite. The tone was not. Evie straightened her sweater. And you are. Roman Hale. He said it like people usually recognize the name. Evie did not, but Caleb appeared from the porch looking pale enough to faint. Miss Carter, you made it. I noticed the gate was open. Caleb swallowed. Mr. Hale was early. Roman's eyes stayed on Evie. This is your house. It was not a question. For now, he repeated almost amused. 2 men came out of the house behind him. One was broad and blonde, with a square jaw and a watchful expression. The other had dark skin, quiet eyes, and the kind of stillness Evie associated with soldiers, not vacationers. They did not look at the ocean. They looked at windows, corners, exits. Evie folded her arms. Mr. Ross told me he found a tenant. He did not mention an entourage. The blond man's mouth twitched. Roman did not smile. They travel with me. Do they also need bedrooms? Yes. At least you're honest. When it suits me. Evie stared at him. Caleb made a small sound that might have been a cough. Roman turned toward the house. I'll take it. Evie blinked. You haven't toured it. I toured enough. You were inside without me. Roman looked back. The gate was open. Because you opened it. Technically, Caleb opened it. Caleb suddenly found the gravel fascinating. Evie looked from Caleb to Roman. This is moving too fast. Roman stepped closer, but not enough to crowd her. Just enough to change the air. I need privacy for 2 months. You need money for repairs. That makes this simple. Nothing about you looks simple. His eyes sharpened with interest. Number. The wind pulled a strand of hair across Evie's face. She pushed it back. I'll consider the rental under conditions. No parties, no damage, no illegal activity. No changes to the property without my approval. And I stay in the guest cottage. Roman's expression shifted. Number. Evie laughed once. Excuse me. If I rent the house, I rent the property. You rent the main house, I own the property. His gaze slid toward the guest cottage, then down the cliff path to the dock. I don't want anyone else here. Then rent somewhere else. Caleb stepped in quickly. Maybe we can discuss numbers. Evie did not look away from Roman. Numbers won't change the cottage. Roman studied her, and for the first time she felt the full attention of him. It was not flirtation, it was assessment. Like he was deciding whether she was an obstacle, a problem, or something more interesting. What do you do, Evie Carter? She hated the way her name sounded in his mouth. Too familiar, too smooth. I'm a therapist. A flicker crossed his face. Are you? Yes. That explains the eye contact. That explains why I recognize control issues when they walk through my gate. The blond man coughed into his fist. Roman's mouth curved barely. Caleb spoke quickly. Mr. Hale is offering $120,000 for 2 months. Evie's eyes moved to him despite herself. The number was absurd. Roman watched her reaction. And I'll cover immediate repairs to the main house. Evie forced her face still. That's generous. No, it's convenient. For who? For both of us, if you stop pretending you don't need it. The insult landed because it was true. Evie looked at the house. The broken shutters, the cracked stone. The $4 million possibility hiding under rot and salt. Then she looked at Roman. $250,000. Caleb made a strangled sound. Roman did not blink. Done. Evie's pulse kicked. She had expected negotiation, hesitation, annoyance. Not done. Repairs approved by me, she said. Cosmetic repairs. Structural repairs if needed. I'm not rebuilding your inheritance for free. No, you're renting it for reasons you won't explain. That brought silence. Even the men near the porch seemed to still. Roman's eyes darkened. You'll have your money by noon. And I stay in the cottage. No visitors without notice. You don't get to approve my visitors. I do if my men are responsible for security. I didn't ask for security. You rarely need security when you ask for it. Evie felt a chill move through her despite the coat. Is that supposed to scare me? Roman stepped closer. No, sweetheart. If I wanted to scare you, you'd know. The word should have sounded cheap. It did not. It sounded like a hand placed at the small of her back in a dark room. Unwanted, warm, dangerous. Evie lifted her chin. Cottage stays mine. Main house is yours for 2 months. You stay out of my space, I stay out of yours. Roman held her gaze. Fine. Caleb exhaled as if his lungs had been locked. They signed the papers that afternoon in Caleb's small office downtown. Evie read every line. Roman sat beside her silent, one ankle crossed over the other as if contracts bored him. Mason Cole, the blond one, stood by the door. Griffin Hayes waited near the window. Evie learned their names from the rental paperwork. Roman Hale, Mason Cole, Griffin Hayes. Roman's date of birth made him 38, 11 years older than her. His address was listed as Boston, Massachusetts, but Caleb's hand shook when he saw it, and Evie noticed Roman notice Caleb noticing. Everyone in this town was afraid of a story Evie had not been told. When she signed her name, Roman watched the pen move. Evelyn Claire Carter, he said. She looked at him, reading upside down. I'm talented. Nosy. That too. Evie closed the folder. Enjoy the house, Mr. Hale. Roman. I prefer Mr. Hale. No, you don't. Her jaw tightened. He smiled, then small and private as if he had found a loose thread and planned to pull. Evie left before he could see her blush. By evening, Bellamy House had changed. Trucks filled the drive. Men carried lumber tools, security panels, boxes of equipment. A crew repaired locks. Another cleared brush near the cliff steps. Someone power washed the terrace. Someone else measured the dock. Evie stood outside the guest cottage with her suitcase at her feet and watched strangers move through the property she had owned for less than a month. Mason approached with a clipboard. The cottage locks were replaced, new keys. Evie accepted them. I didn't approve that. Old locks were useless. Is Roman always this considerate without permission? Mason glanced at her, then at the main house. Roman is many things. Considerate usually costs extra. Despite herself, Evie almost smiled. Inside the cottage was small but livable. A tiny kitchen, a sitting area with faded blue furniture. One bedroom facing the water. A bathroom with a clawfoot tub and cracked tile. The back door opened onto stone steps that led to the dock. The place felt exposed, but beautiful. Evie set her suitcase near the bed. For a while, she simply stood there listening. Men worked outside. Waves hit rock below. Somewhere in the main house, Roman Hale gave orders in a voice too calm to rise. She unpacked slowly. 3 sweaters, 2 pairs of jeans. Work clothes for online sessions. Her laptop, her notebook. A framed photo of her father that she placed on the bedside table. She had no framed photo of her mother. That realization sat in the room with her. After dark, Evie made tea and stepped outside. The main house glowed from within. Shadows moved behind curtains. The cliff wind pushed at her hair. Down by the dock, 2 men installed something metal into the stone. Evie walked toward them. What is that? One of the men looked up, then looked past her toward the main house. A lift. For what? A boat. I didn't approve a boat. The man shrugged. Talk to Mr. Hale. I'm talking to you. No, ma'am, you're asking me to ignore him. The answer was so direct it left no room for argument. Evie turned toward the main house. On the second-floor balcony, Roman stood in the shadows, phone to his ear, watching her. Even from a distance, she felt the weight of his attention. She refused to look away first. Roman ended his call and rested both hands on the railing. Neither of them spoke. The ocean filled the silence. Evie went back inside and locked the new door. Then she checked it twice. In the main house, Roman watched the cottage light switch on. Mason came up behind him. She's going to ask questions. Roman looked toward the dock where the men continued installing the lift. She already is. Want me to move her to town? Roman's answer came too quickly. Number. Mason studied him. Roman did not turn. She stays where I can see her. That sounds like a problem. Roman's eyes remained on the cottage. It is. Downstairs, Griffin called from the entry hall. Found something in the cellar. Roman followed him below. The basement smelled of damp stone and old secrets. Behind a stack of rotting shelves, Griffin had uncovered a sealed brick arch with a rusted iron plate set into the wall. Roman wiped dust from the plate. A crest appeared beneath his hand. A bell. A blade. A crown. The Bellamy mark. For the first time all day, Roman smiled without warmth. Mason stood beside him. So the stories were true. Roman looked toward the ceiling, toward the room where Claire Bellamy's portrait hung, toward the cottage beyond the walls where Claire's daughter was probably pretending not to be afraid. Yes, he said. His voice was quiet enough to disappear into the stone. This was never just a house. By morning, Bellamy House sounded alive in a way that did not belong to old houses. Hammers struck wood. Boots crossed the porch. Men spoke in low voices near the terrace, never loud enough for Evie to catch full sentences. A saw screamed somewhere inside the main house, then stopped suddenly, as if the person using it had been reminded silence was safer. Evie sat at the small kitchen table in the guest cottage with her laptop open and a cup of coffee going cold beside her. On screen, one of her clients was talking about a marriage that had ended 3 years ago, but still lived in her body. I know he's gone, the woman said. I know I'm safe. But when I hear a car door outside, I still freeze. Evie nodded, pen moving across her notebook. Your body learned danger before your mind had time to explain it, she said gently. Healing means teaching both of them the same truth slowly. The client wiped her eyes. Evie kept her voice steady, calm, useful. That was what she did best. She created order for other people while keeping her own chaos behind a locked door. When the session ended, Evie leaned back and let silence settle. Then a heavy thud came from across the property. She looked toward the window. Another thud. Then another. She stood before she could tell herself not to. The main house balcony faced the sea. Roman Hale stood there in black workout pants, bare from the waist up, striking a heavy bag that hung from a steel beam. Every movement was clean and controlled. Shoulder, hip, fist. He did not fight like a man burning off stress. He fought like a man remembering where to place damage. Thud, thud, thud. Evie should have looked away. Instead, she watched the muscles in his back shift under skin marked by old scars. A thin, white line crossed his ribs. Another cut disappeared near his shoulder. Those scars did not look accidental. Roman stopped suddenly. His fist pressed against the bag. Slowly, he turned his head. Their eyes met across the morning air. Evie's body reacted as if she had been caught doing something worse than staring. Roman lifted 2 fingers in a lazy salute. Evie pulled the curtain shut. "Absolutely not," she whispered. But her pulse kept the rhythm of his fists long after the balcony went quiet. The rest of the day gave her no peace. During her second client session, drilling started near the dock. The sound cut through the cottage walls, sharp and relentless. Evie tried to keep her expression composed while her client described panic attacks in grocery stores, but each metallic burst made her jaw tighten. When the call ended, she closed the laptop and marched outside. 2 men were securing a steel mechanism into the stone near the dock. The structure had been cleaned overnight. Old moss scraped away cracks filled with fresh mortar. Evie stopped a few feet from them. "What are you installing?" One man looked up. "A boat lift. I already told someone I didn't approve a boat." He returned to his work. "Mr. Hale approved it. Mr. Hale does not own the dock." The man paused just long enough to show he had heard her, then kept drilling. Evie felt heat climb her neck. She turned and walked toward the main house. The front door was open. Inside, the entry hall looked different already. Sheets had been removed from the furniture. The floors had been swept. Sunlight cut through clean windows and fell across the old Bellamy portrait. Evie slowed. Her mother's painted eyes seemed clearer in the daylight. Claire Bellamy stood in the center of the family, chin lifted, one hand curled at her side. Evie had seen that posture before in the mirror. A body braced against being touched. A face trained not to ask. Evie took 1 step closer. "What did you run from?" she whispered. Water dripped somewhere above. Evie looked up. Roman stood at the top of the stairs with a towel wrapped low around his waist, wet hair pushed back from his face. Water moved down his chest in slow lines. He held another towel in one hand but made no effort to cover himself. Evie forgot language for half a second. Then she spun toward the portrait. "I thought no one was home." Roman's voice came from above, amused and cool. "You thought wrong. I came to talk about the dock. People usually knock before entering. This is my house. For 2 months, that depends on which room you're standing in." His footsteps descended the stairs. Evie kept her back to him, which only made things worse. She could hear him, feel him. The air changed as he came closer. "You have workers drilling into my dock without permission," she said. "Our dock. There is no our. Not yet." She turned before she could stop herself. Roman stood 3 steps above her now, close enough that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means you ask a lot of questions for someone who claims she doesn't want answers." Evie crossed her arms. "I want normal answers, not rich man riddles." A faint smile touched his mouth. "Rich man riddles. Yes, you should put that on a business card." He came down the last steps and walked past her into the kitchen as if they had been having breakfast together for years. "Come on." Evie stared after him. I'm not following a half-naked man through my own house. Roman looked back over his shoulder. That's not what you were telling yourself 30 seconds ago. Her face went hot. I'm leaving. After coffee. Number. He opened a cabinet, saw nothing inside, and frowned like he had discovered a crime scene. You don't have espresso. I have coffee in the cottage. American coffee is punishment. This is America. Not in this house. He took his phone from the counter and made one call. Mason, espresso, 2 cups, and tell the men to pause drilling for 20 minutes. Evie narrowed her eyes. I can speak for myself. I noticed. Everyone in town has noticed. You're unbearable. You came into my house. My house. Roman stepped closer, towel still low, eyes steady. Then make me coffee, landlord. She should have walked out. Instead, 10 minutes later, she found herself sitting across from Roman on the stone terrace while Mason placed 2 small cups on the table without comment. Roman had put on black pants and a white shirt, though he had left the top buttons open. Evie found that almost more irritating than the towel. He poured espresso from a silver pot and slid 1 cup toward her. Drink. I don't take orders. Then consider it an invitation. She lifted the cup mostly to prove she was not affected. The coffee was rich, dark, and annoyingly perfect. Roman watched her mouth soften around the first sip. There, he said, now you've had coffee. I've had coffee before. No, you had warm regret. Evie almost smiled and hated herself for it. The ocean below them struck the rocks in long, steady crashes. Farther out, a fishing boat cut across the gray water. Harbor Point looked harmless from here, all rooftops and church steeple and gulls riding the wind. Evie set the cup down. Why are you really here? Roman looked at the sea. Privacy. Privacy doesn't require cameras on every corner of the house. His gaze returned to her. You found those. You didn't hide them well. I wasn't trying to. That's worse. Roman leaned back. I'm a wealthy man staying in a large, isolated house. Security is practical. You talk like every sentence has been through a lawyer first, and you listen like every word is evidence. I'm a therapist. No, he said. You're a woman who became a therapist because other people are easier to understand than yourself. The words were quiet. They landed clean. Evie's fingers tightened around the cup. You don't know me. Roman's eyes moved over her face, not with softness, but with attention. I know you lock your door twice. I know you sleep with a lamp on in the kitchen. I know you work with people who cry to you all day, then sit outside alone at night, like the ocean is the only thing you trust not to ask questions. Evie stood so fast the chair scraped a stone. Are you watching me? Roman's expression did not change. I'm watching the property. I'm on the property. Yes. The honesty of it chilled her. You don't get to do that. You're alone in a town you don't understand, carrying a name people still lower their voices to say. My mother's name. Your name, too. Evie stared at him. What do you know about my mother? For the first time, Roman looked away. Ask someone who owes you the truth. Do you? His jaw tightened. Number. The answer hurt more than it should have. Evie turned and walked back toward the cottage. Tell your men to stay off my dock until I approve the work. Roman's voice followed her. You'll approve it. She stopped but did not turn. You are very used to getting what you want. Yes, at least you admit it. A beat. Then he said lower. Not always. Evie kept walking. That afternoon, she drove into town with the Bellamy name sitting heavy in her mouth. The town records office occupied the first floor of a brick building beside the library. Inside, the air smelled like paper toner and lemon cleaner. An older clerk sat behind the counter reading a magazine. Evie approached. I'm looking for family records, Bellamy. The woman's eyes lifted. The room changed. It was subtle, but Evie felt it. The clerk's shoulders stiffened. A man at a desk in the corner stopped typing. Somewhere behind a half-open door, a chair creaked. What kind of records, the clerk asked. Birth records, property records, anything connected to Claire Bellamy Carter. The clerk removed her glasses. And you are her daughter. The silence that followed felt older than Evie. The clerk stood and disappeared into the back room. Evie heard low voices. A drawer opened. Papers shifted. When the clerk returned, she did not bring a file. She brought a handwritten address on a yellow note. "There's one Bellamy left in town," the clerk said. Evie took the paper. "Maya Bellamy." The clerk nodded. "She'll talk if she wants to. That's supposed to mean something." In Harbor Point, the woman said softly, "Most things do." Maya, a Bellamy, lived in a white cottage near the old cannery where the street sloped toward the harbor and lobster traps stacked along fences. A blue bicycle leaned against the porch. Wind chimes sang in the sea air. Evie knocked once. The door opened almost immediately. The woman on the other side had dark curls, warm brown skin, and eyes that widened the second she saw Evie's face. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You look like Claire." Evie's breath caught. "I'm Evie Carter. I think we might be related." Maya did not ask for proof. She stepped forward and wrapped Evie in a hug so sudden and firm that Evie stood frozen inside it. Then, slowly, she lifted one hand and hugged back. 15 minutes later, they sat in Maya's kitchen with mugs of tea and a plate of blueberry biscuits between them. Maya talked like someone trying not to overwhelm a starving person with too much food. She told Evie their grandfathers had been brothers. She told her the Bellamys once owned boats, warehouses, restaurants, union halls, and judges without ever putting their names on half of it. She told her Claire had been beautiful, brilliant, and terrifyingly composed even as a teenager. She left at 22, Maya said. People said she ran for love. Evie looked down at her tea. "My father." Maybe partly. What does that mean?" Maya's smile faded. "It means Claire was supposed to marry into another family." "What family?" Maya hesitated. "Hale." Evie went still. Outside, gulls cried over the harbor. "Roman Hale." Maya's face sharpened. "You know Roman. He rented my house." Maya sat back slowly. "Oh, honey." That was not a comforting response. Evie set the mug down. "What is he?" Maya looked toward the window, then lowered her voice. "Roman Hale is the kind of man people invite to charity dinners because they're afraid not to. His family has controlled pieces of Boston and the northern ports for a long time. Shipping, trucking, construction unions. Clean businesses on paper, dirty ones underneath." Evie's mouth went dry. "And my mother was supposed to marry into that. Not Roman. His uncle, I think. Or maybe his father. The story changes depending who's drunk enough to tell it. That's insane. That's Harbor Point." Evie pressed her fingers to her temple. "My mother was an art history professor." Maya's eyes softened. Maybe she became one. But she was born a Bellamy. Evie looked toward the harbor. All her life, Claire Carter had been quiet, controlled. A woman who wore pearls to faculty dinners and corrected grammar on grocery lists. Evie remembered her mother standing in hospital corridors after her father died, dry-eyed, signing forms without shaking. At 13, Evie thought her mother was heartless. Now, for the first time, she wondered if Claire had simply been trained not to bleed where people could see. Maya reached across the table and touched Evie's hand. "Come out with me tonight." Evie blinked. "What?" "There's a summer festival on the boardwalk. Music, food, bad dancing. You need something normal. Nothing about today has been normal." "Exactly." Evie almost refused. Then she thought of Roman on the terrace telling her she asked questions because she did not want answers. She said yes. That evening, the boardwalk glowed under strings of warm lights. Music spilled from a small stage near the marina. Fiddles, guitar drums, voices rough with whiskey and salt air. Children ran between picnic tables. Couples danced in front of the band. The air smelled like fried clams, beer pine smoke, and sugar. Maya handed Evie a paper cup of cider. "Drink. You look like you're waiting for the town to attack you. Is that unlikely?" "Depends who you insult." Evie laughed before she could stop herself. The sound surprised her. Maya grinned. There she is. For a while, Evie let the night carry her. Maya introduced her to people who looked at her face, heard her last name, and recalculated what to say. Some were kind. Some were careful. Some were afraid. Then the crowd shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically. It moved the way water moves when something large passes underneath. Evie turned. Roman Hale walked onto the boardwalk in a dark shirt and black coat, Mason at his side, Griffin a few steps behind. The music kept playing, but men near the bar lowered their voices. A bartender placed a glass on the counter without being asked. An older man near the rail nodded once. Roman returned the nod. Not friendly. Acknowledged. Evie felt Maya lean close. "That's your tenant. He is not my anything." Maya's smile curved. That sounded personal. It was grammatical. Roman's eyes found Evie through the moving crowd. For a moment, the boardwalk narrowed to the space between them. Then Maya lifted her cup. "I'm going to say hello." Evie caught her wrist. "Why?" "Because he's Roman Hale." "That is not a reason." Maya pulled free with a grin. "It is in this town." Evie watched Maya walk toward him. Hips easy, smile bright. Roman turned as she approached. He listened when she spoke. Then he smiled. Actually smiled. Not the sharp half-smile he gave Evie when provoking her. This one was smoother, warmer public. Maya laughed and touched his arm. Evie looked away. Her chest felt tight. Ridiculous. She barely knew him. She did not like him. He had cameras on her house and men drilling into her dock. He had admitted to watching her. He was dangerous, controlling, and exactly the kind of man she would tell a client to avoid. Maya leaned closer to Roman to say something near his ear. Evie drank the rest of her cider. Too fast. The music changed. Maya came back flushed and pleased. "He's intense. He's arrogant. He asked about you." Evie tried not to react. "What did he ask?" Maya's eyes danced. "Whether you were enjoying yourself." "That's not about me. That's surveillance with better shoes." Maya laughed. "You are in trouble." "I am absolutely not in trouble." "Good. Then you won't mind if I dance with him." Evie looked toward Roman. He was already watching her. "Do whatever you want." Maya walked back into the crowd. Roman met her halfway when the next song began. The rhythm was fast, old, coastal folk music turned rougher by drums and clapping. Maya took his hand and Roman moved like he knew every beat before it arrived. Evie hated how good he was. He spun Maya easily. She laughed bright and opened, her hair flying. His hand settled at her waist. The crowd cheered when he dipped her low. Evie's fingers curled around her empty cup. She told herself to look away. She did not. When the song ended, Maya kissed Roman's cheek slow enough for everyone to see. Roman's expression remained unreadable, but his eyes cut to Evie. Caught. Heat rushed to her face. Maya returned breathless. "If you don't want him," she said, fanning herself with one hand, "I may have to make a terrible decision." Evie forced a laugh. "Please do. Save me the trouble." The band began another song. This one started with a low drum beat, then clapping. People formed a loose circle near the stage. Maya tried to pull Evie forward. "Number." "Yes, I don't dance in circles. You do tonight." Before Evie could resist, Maya shoved her into the edge of the dancers. Evie stumbled, laughed, and found the beat by accident. Step, turn, clap, step. Her hair came loose from its clip. The wind pulled it across her face. For the first time since arriving in Maine, she was not calculating money, exits, or danger. She was only moving. Then Roman stepped into the circle. The crowd opened for him without being asked. He came straight to Evie and offered his hand. Not to Maya. To her. Evie stared at his palm. "Number." His mouth tilted. "You say that often, and yet you struggle to understand it. Dance with me. I don't trust you." His voice dropped. "Then trust the rhythm." She should have walked away. Instead, she placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain. The dance was quick. Roman led with precision but not force. When Evie missed a step, he adjusted without mocking her. When she turned too fast, his hand found her back and steadied her. The contact burned through her thin sweater. "You're tense," he said. "You're observant. You're angry. You're invasive. You're jealous." Evie nearly tripped. Roman caught her. "I'm not jealous." "Number. You danced with my cousin to irritate me. I danced with Maya because she asked. And now." His eyes held hers. "Now I'm dancing with you because I wanted to." The music seemed to grow louder and farther away at the same time. Evie turned under his arm. Her hair brushed his jaw. His hand returned to her waist. For one breath, their bodies aligned too closely. She felt the strength of him, the heat, the restraint. That was the worst part. Not that Roman Hale wanted control, that he was capable of holding back. The song ended on a hard final beat. Applause broke around them. Evie and Roman stood still. Her breathing was fast. His was not as steady as he pretended. She looked up at him and saw something unguarded pass through his face. It disappeared almost instantly, but not before she recognized it. Want. Not amusement, not strategy, not power. Want. Evie pulled her hand free. "I'm going home." Roman's eyes narrowed slightly. "Alone." "Yes." "Number." That one word brought all her defenses back. "You don't get to decide that." The road to Mariner's Rise is dark. "I'm aware." "Evie." The way he said her name almost stopped her. Almost. She stepped back. "Good night, Roman." She found Maya near the bar, said she needed air, refused a ride, and walked away before anyone could change her mind. The road up from town was quiet. Fog had rolled in from the water, softening the streetlights. Evie wrapped her coat tighter and walked fast, shoes striking damp pavement. Behind her, music faded until only the ocean remained. By the time she reached the cottage, her skin still remembered Roman's hand at her waist. She hated that memory most because it did not feel like fear. Inside, she locked the door. Once. Twice. She poured a glass of red wine and sat by the window with a book open in her lap. The words blurred. Her mind kept returning to the boardwalk, to Maya's hand on Roman's chest, to Roman's eyes when he said he wanted to dance with her. "Get out of my head," she whispered. The cottage creaked around her. At first, she thought it was wind. Then came a scrape from outside. Metal against wood. Evie lifted her head. The room went very still. She set the glass down and listened. Another sound. This time from the back near the dock. Her phone sat on the table. She should have picked it up. Instead, anger moved faster than caution. If Roman had sent another man to work on that boat lift in the middle of the night, she was going to make him regret every dollar of the rental agreement. Evie crossed the cottage and opened the back door. Cold air rushed in. The dock lay silver under the moon. The water moved black beneath it. The small boat, tied there, rocked gently against the stone. Empty. Evie stepped outside. "Hello?" No answer. The fog shifted. The boat knocked softly against the dock. Evie exhaled, annoyed with herself. Then the night behind her breathed. A hand closed around her throat. Hard. Her feet left the ground. The wine, the dance, the lights. Roman's hand at her waist, all of it vanished. There was only pressure, only darkness, only the terrible knowledge that she could not scream. The hand around Evie's throat was not frantic. That was what terrified her most. It was steady, practiced, almost patient. Whoever held her knew exactly how much pressure to use. Enough to lift her toes from the wet stone. Enough to close her airway. Enough to make her hands useless as they clawed at a wrist wrapped in black leather. The dock blurred beneath her. The ocean moved below, dark and endless. Evie tried to kick backward, but her body had already begun to betray her. Panic surged hot through her chest. Her lungs seized. Her fingers scraped fabric skin, nothing that mattered. The masked man leaned close. His breath smelled like mint and rain. "Bellamy blood," he whispered. The words entered her like a knife. Then he hit her. Pain exploded across her mouth. White light flashed behind her eyes. For 1 second she was 13 again, standing in a hospital hallway while her mother signed papers after her father died, not crying, not shaking, not letting Evie hold her hand. The memory vanished under the pressure at her throat. Evie tried to scream. Nothing came out. A voice cut through the fog. Let her go. Roman. The masked man turned, dragging Evie with him. Her back slammed against his chest. His arm locked across her collarbone, his hand still crushing her throat. Through tears and darkness, Evie saw Roman standing at the edge of the dock. He had no coat. only a black shirt open at the throat rein, soaking through the fabric hair wet against his forehead. In his right hand he held a gun. It was raised and steady. His face was not angry. It was worse. It was empty. "Step away from her," Roman said. The masked man laughed softly. "You always did like broken things, Hale." Roman did not blink. "You have 3 seconds." Evie's vision tunneled. Roman became a dark shape surrounded by silver rain. The masked man shifted behind her. Roman's eyes flicked once to Evie's face. For the first time since she had met him, she saw fear. Not for himself. For her. That was the last thing she saw before the world folded into black. Voices reached her first. Not words. Edges. A man shouting. Footsteps on stairs. A door slamming. Roman speaking in a low, dangerous stream that sounded like command after command after command. Evie floated somewhere beneath it. Her body hurt from far away. Then pain found her. Her throat burned as if someone had poured fire down it. Her lip throbbed. Her jaw pulsed with every heartbeat. She opened her eyes. A ceiling she did not recognize came slowly into focus. Dark wood beams. A brass light fixture. Rain tapping against tall windows. She tried to sit up. A hand caught her wrist. "Do not." Roman sat beside the bed. His sleeves were rolled up. There was blood on one cuff. His hair was still damp. A white cloth, a bowl of water ointment, and an ice pack sat on the nightstand. Evie tried to speak. Only a broken rasp came out. Roman's expression tightened. "Do not talk." She stared at him, furious and afraid. He dipped the cloth into the water and brought it to her lip. "This is going to sting." She flinched before he touched her. He paused. Something moved through his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or restraint. "I will be careful." The cloth touched the split corner of her mouth. Pain snapped through her. Her fingers curled into the sheet. Roman's jaw flexed as if the pain had entered his body, too. "I know," he said quietly. "I know." She grabbed his wrist before he could pull away. Her voice came out shredded. "Who?" Roman looked down at her hand around his wrist. Then back to her face. "Not now." Evie's eyes hardened. "Who?" A muscle moved in his cheek. "One of Kane's men." The name meant nothing to her and everything to him. She tried again. "Police." Roman's face closed. "Number." Evie pushed against the mattress, trying to sit. Dizziness hit fast. Roman placed one hand behind her shoulders and eased her upright despite her glare. "You were attacked," she rasped. "I need police. The police will write a report. Derek Kane will buy the report before the ink dries. Then he will know exactly where you are, who saw you, and how badly you are hurt." Evie swallowed and almost cried from the pain. "You killed him." Roman did not answer. That silence was answer enough. Evie shoved his hand away. Her voice broke around every word. "You do not get to decide that. He had his hand around your throat. You do not get to decide that." Roman stood. For 1 second the room seemed too small for him. "I do when the man who touched you works for someone who has been hunting my family for years." "Your family." His eyes cut to hers. "And yours." The words landed between them. Evie stared. Rain streaked down the windows behind him. "What are you talking about?" Roman looked toward the door, then back at her. "You need to see something." "Number." "Yes. I almost died tonight. I am not following you into another secret." Roman's voice lowered. "You almost died because of a secret." Evie wanted to refuse. She wanted to demand a phone, a hospital, a plane back to Chicago, a universe where mothers told daughters the truth before leaving them houses full of ghosts. Instead, she swung her feet to the floor. The room tilted. Roman caught her before she fell. His arms closed around her waist, solid and warm. Evie pushed at his chest. "Let go." He released her at once. That surprised her more than the touch. He crossed the room and opened a drawer, pulling out a dark sweater. "Put this on." She looked at him. "Is that an order?" "No," he said. "It is cold downstairs." She took the sweater. It smelled faintly like him. Cedar smoke rain. She hated that she noticed. The hallway outside Roman's room was dim. Mason stood near the staircase, a gun held low at his side. His eyes moved over Evie's bruised throat and split lip. His face tightened. "I am sorry," he said. The sincerity unsettled her. Evie said nothing. Roman led her down the main stairs through the entry hall beneath the Bellamy portrait and into the basement. The air changed below ground. Damp stone, salt, old wood, iron. At the far end of the cellar, behind shelves that had been pushed aside, a section of wall stood open. Beyond it waited a narrow passage lit by small lamps Roman's men must have installed recently. Evie stopped. "You knew this was here." "I suspected. You rented my house because of this." Roman turned. "I rented your house because men were trying to kill me. That is not better." "No," he said, "it is not." They moved through the passage. The tunnel ran under the house, its stone walls wet in places, its ceiling low enough that Roman had to duck once. Evie held the sweater closed around her body and tried not to think about the bruises blooming beneath the collar. At the end of the tunnel was a steel door. Roman entered a code into a keypad hidden behind a loose stone. The lock clicked. The room beyond smelled like dust paper, gun oil, and time. Evie stepped inside and forgot to breathe. The walls were covered with framed photographs, maps, old documents, ledgers, and oil portraits. A long table stood in the center with yellowed papers sealed under glass. One wall held a huge hand-painted family tree. At the top, in black ink, was the name Bellamy. Evie moved toward it as if pulled. Her grandfather's name appeared there. Then Claire Bellamy Carter. Then Evelyn Claire Carter. Her own name written in careful script. Alive. A strange sound left her throat. Roman moved behind her, not touching. "This room belonged to your grandfather." "My grandfather owned a hardware store." "No, your grandfather owned men who owned hardware stores." Evie turned slowly. "What was my family?" Roman's gaze held hers. "Powerful." "That is not an answer." "Dangerous." Her mouth trembled, but she forced it still. "Better." Roman looked around the room. The Bellamys controlled Harbor Point for almost a century. Fishing permits, shipping contracts, dock unions, warehouses, judges, councilmen. Some of it legal. Most of it dressed to look legal. They moved goods through the coast before the government knew how to watch the water. Evie stared at the photographs. Men in suits on docks, women in pearls beside governors. A young Claire standing beside an older man with hard eyes. Her mother looked 18, maybe 19. Beautiful. Cold, trapped. She never told me. She left before they could make her useful. Useful how? Roman hesitated. Evie heard it. Her eyes narrowed. "Say it." "She was supposed to marry into my family." The room seemed to shift. Evie gripped the edge of the table. "Your family?" "Hale. My mother was supposed to marry a Hale. My father's brother, according to the old arrangement. Maybe my father if politics changed. These families traded loyalty through blood. Marriage was paper money, territory, protection." Evie laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "That is disgusting." "Yes." The agreement surprised her. Roman moved to the table and lifted a folder. Inside were old newspaper clippings. Fires, missing men, federal investigations that ended without charges. "Claire ran," he said. "She married your father in Chicago and cut all ties. After she left, the Bellamy structure collapsed. Some people were relieved, others lost fortunes. Kane's family took pieces of the coast. My family took others. Derek Kane." Roman placed a photo on the table. A man in his 40s stared up from it with pale eyes and a politician's smile. "He has wanted Harbor Point clean of Bellamy blood for years. Why now?" "Because you came back." Evie backed away from the table. "Number." "Evie." "No, I came here to sell a house, that is all." Roman's voice softened, which almost made it worse. "That house is not just property. It is a symbol. To people like Kane, your return means the Bellamy line can be used. By me, by old loyalists, by anyone who wants to challenge him. I do not want to challenge anyone. Kane does not care what you want." Evie pressed a hand carefully to her throat. The bruises hurt under her fingers. "What about you?" Roman said nothing. She stepped toward him. "Do you care what I want?" His eyes darkened. "Yes." "Then let me leave." Number. The answer was immediate. Her anger returned sharp and clean. There it is. You leave tonight, you die before sunrise. You do not know that. I know exactly that. You cannot keep me here. Roman's control cracked just enough for his voice to roughen. I found you hanging from a stranger's hand on your own dock. Your lips were blue. Your pulse was weak. I had to check twice to make sure you were still breathing. Evie went still. Roman looked away, but not before she saw it. The memory had scared him. Not irritated him, not inconvenienced him. Scared him. Mason appeared at the tunnel entrance. Roman. Roman turned. What? Mason's eyes moved briefly to Evie, then back. Kane's people were seen near the South Marina. 3 cars. Maybe more. Ethan's name came up on the wire. Roman's face went cold. Evie saw the man from the terrace vanish. This was the other Roman, the one men feared before he spoke. How long? Less than an hour if they come straight here. Evie felt the room tilt again. Roman looked at Mason. Bring Judge Whitcomb, bring Maya. Lock the road. Nobody gets through without my word. Mason nodded and disappeared. Evie stared at Roman. Judge. Roman opened a cabinet built into the wall and pulled out a long white garment bag. Evie's blood went cold. Number. Roman laid the garment bag across the table. The zipper was open, just enough for ivory fabric to show. Evie stepped back. Number. Roman turned to her. I need you to listen. I am done listening. If Kane reaches this house while you are unmarried, he can claim you are unprotected Bellamy blood. A loose heir. A liability. People will stand aside because they do not know who owns the risk. Owns. Roman flinched at the word but kept going. If you marry me, every old family still tied to Bellamy or Hale law has to recognize the union. You become my wife. You become protected by both names. This is insane. Yes, you cannot just bring a judge and a dress and decide my life. I am not deciding your life. I am trying to keep you alive long enough for you to hate me properly. Evie's laugh broke into something close to a sob. You think that is charming? Number. Then, what is it? Roman stepped closer, stopping just beyond reach. It is the only move left. She shook her head. No, there is always another move. There is leaving. There is hiding. There is calling federal authorities. There is telling the truth to someone who does not solve problems with bullets. The truth takes time. Kane is already moving. Evie looked toward the family tree. Her name looked trapped beneath glass. What happens if I say no? Roman's jaw tightened. I put you in a car with Mason and send you inland. We try to outrun them. And? His silence answered. Evie turned toward the table and touched the edge of the garment bag. Her hands were shaking. Roman noticed. He looked like he wanted to reach for her and knew he had no right. Why do you even care? She whispered. He said nothing for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its armor. Because you were never supposed to look at me like I could still choose to be decent. Evie looked at him. The room hummed with old violence around them. Roman continued. The first day, you should have been a complication. Then you stood in my gate and told me no, while every sensible instinct in your body told you to run. You walked through this town asking questions people are afraid to ask. You looked at that portrait like a daughter, not an heir. And when you danced with me for 1 minute, I forgot every man waiting to kill me. Evie's throat tightened for reasons that had nothing to do with bruises. Roman took one slow breath. I care because when that man had his hand around your throat, I understood something I should have understood earlier. What? His eyes met hers. If they take you from this world, the world gets smaller. Evie closed her eyes. She hated him for saying it like that. She hated that some wounded part of her wanted to believe him. Do not make this romantic, she whispered. I am making it honest. The door above slammed. Voices moved through the house. Maya arrived first, pale and breathless with rain in her curls. When she saw Evie's face, her hand flew to her mouth. Oh, Evie. Evie wanted to tell her not to look so frightened. She could not. Judge Whitcomb arrived 10 minutes later, an elderly man with silver hair shaking hands and a black coat buttoned wrong. He looked at Roman and said nothing. That silence told Evie he had done favors for dangerous men before. Mason carried the dress upstairs to Roman's bedroom. Evie followed with Maya. The room was warm, lit by lamps while rain struck the windows. The ivory dress lay across the bed like a dare. Maya closed the door. "Do you want this?" she asked quietly. Evie looked at her through the mirror. "I want yesterday." Maya's face softened. "I know. I want my mother to have told me the truth. I know. I want not to be the kind of woman who considers marrying a criminal because he is the safest person in the room." Maya stepped behind her. Wanton survival rarely arrive holding hands. Evie looked at the bruises on her throat. Dark fingerprints circled her skin. Her mother had spent a lifetime running from this name. Evie had spent a lifetime mistaking silence for emptiness. Maybe silence had been protection. Maybe it had been fear. Maybe it had been both. Evie touched the dress. "Help me." Maya zipped her into it with trembling fingers. The dress fit too well. That made Evie angry, as if the house itself had been waiting to dress her in someone else's fate. When she stepped into the hall, the main house had gone quiet. Men stood near windows with guns hidden badly beneath jackets. Mason watched the road through the curtains. Griffin checked the side entrance. The judge waited beneath the Bellamy portrait. Roman stood at the foot of the stairs in a black suit. When he saw her, his entire body went still, not with victory, with awe. Evie descended slowly, one hand on the railing. Her lip was split. Her throat was bruised. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders. The dress moved like pale fire in the dim light. Roman did not speak until she reached him. "You look beautiful." Evie held his gaze. "I look cornered." Pain crossed his face. Yes, the honesty steadied her. The judge cleared his throat. The ceremony took place in the entry hall while the storm battered the house. No flowers, no music, no guests except the ones carrying guns. Judge Whitcomb's voice shook through the opening words. Evie heard almost none of them. She heard the rain, the ocean, Mason murmuring into a radio, Maya breathing behind her, Roman beside her, close but not touching. When the judge asked if she took Roman Hale as her husband, Evie looked at the portrait above them. Claire Bellamy stared back from another life. Evie thought of her mother running. She thought of her own hands clawing at a masked man's wrist. She thought of Roman saying the world got smaller. Then she looked at him. "I do." Roman's eyes changed. Something inside them gave way. When his turn came, his voice did not shake. "I do." He slid a ring onto her finger. It was warm from his hand. The judge pronounced them husband and wife. Roman turned to Evie. For one suspended second he waited, not taking, asking without words. Evie hated that it mattered. She lifted her chin. Roman kissed her. It was not soft, but it was careful. A vow pressed against pain. A promise with blood near the edge of it. Then a gunshot cracked through the storm. Glass shattered in the east window. Maya screamed. Roman pulled Evie behind him as men outside opened fire on Bellamy House. Roman moved before Evie understood the window had broken. 1 second, the kiss was still warm on her mouth. The next, his arm locked around her waist and drove her behind the curve of the staircase. Glass rained across the entry hall. Men shouted. The judge dropped to the floor with both hands over his head. Maya screamed once, then Mason grabbed her and pulled her behind the dining room wall. Another shot tore through the front door. Wood splintered. Roman pushed Evie down beside the bottom stair. "Stay low." His voice had changed. It was no longer the man who had stood before her and said vows beneath her mother's portrait. This voice was colder, clipped at the edges, built for smoke and blood. Evie gripped the banister. Her wedding dress pooled around her knees like spilled moonlight. "I can move." Roman checked the magazine in his gun without looking at her. "I know." Another window shattered. A man outside yelled. Mason fired from the dining room. The shot cracked through the hall and someone outside hit the porch with a heavy sound. The smell came next. Gunpowder, rain, broken wood, candle wax. Evie pressed one hand to her bruised throat and tried to breathe around the pain. Roman leaned close enough that she felt his words against her ear. "Listen to me." The west hallway leads to the old kitchen stairs. Mason will take you and Maya down into the cellar. Number. His eyes cut to hers. Evie. You said Cain wants me alive or dead because of what I represent. That is why you go underground. That is why I do not disappear while everyone else fights over my name. For a heartbeat, anger flashed across his face. Then something else followed it. Fear. Do not make me choose between winning this and keeping you breathing. You do not get to choose for me anymore. A bullet punched into the staircase above them, spraying wood dust through her hair. Roman flinched toward her, shielding her with his body. Evie looked past his shoulder. Across the entry hall, the Bellamy portrait hung crooked from the impact. Her painted mother watched the room burn into war. Evie's chest tightened. Then she saw something else. On the lower edge of the portrait frame was a small brass notch. She had noticed it before in the hidden room map. A mark that matched the old west passage. The house had another way down. Roman. Not now. The west hallway is wrong. His eyes narrowed. What? She pointed toward the portrait. The map in the hidden room. There was a servant passage behind the library wall. It connects to the boathouse tunnel. If Cain knows about the cellar stairs, he will be waiting there. Roman stared at her for half a second. Then Mason shouted from the dining room. 2 coming up the east side. Roman fired twice toward the front door, then looked at Mason. Library passage. Take Maya. Take the judge. Move. Mason did not ask why. He grabbed Maya by the arm and dragged the judge up from the floor. Maya reached for Evie. Come with us. Evie started toward her, but another round of shots smashed through the hall. Mason shoved Maya into the library. Griffin appeared from the side corridor, bleeding at the temple, gun raised. Back entrance is hot, he said. They cut the generator. The lights flickered once, then died. The house fell into darkness, broken only by lightning and muzzle flashes. Evie's breath came fast. Roman touched her wrist. Not grabbing. Grounding. Stay behind me. This time she did. They moved through the library as Mason pulled a shelf away from the wall. Behind it, a narrow wooden door stood hidden in the paneling, swollen with age. Mason kicked it open. Cold air breathed out from the passage. Go, Roman ordered. Maya pulled the judge inside. Mason followed. Griffin stood at the entrance covering the hall. Evie stepped into the passage, then stopped. A faint sound came from the dead security monitor on the library desk. Static, then voices. Roman heard it too. He crossed the room and adjusted the receiver. One of the cameras outside still worked, running on backup power. A man's voice came through in broken bursts. Do not push the front. He will move her through the cellar. Cain wants Hale flushed to the dock. Evie froze. Roman's hand stilled over the receiver. Another voice answered. What about the girl? Alive if possible. Dead if needed. Either way, Hale comes out. The feed snapped back to static. Evie turned to Roman. They are not storming the house. Roman's eyes were already moving, calculating. They are hurting us. They want you outside. Griffin's voice came from the doorway. The dock. Roman looked at him. Griffin's face was pale beneath the blood. That boat lift we installed. If they saw it, they think we use the water. Evie gripped the edge of the desk. No, not just think, they were told. The room went silent. Mason had come back from the passage entrance. He looked from Evie to Roman. She swallowed against the pain in her throat. The man on the radio said cellar. He knew you would use the house routes. He knew enough, but not everything. Someone gave him partial information. Roman's gaze moved slowly to Griffin. Griffin did not move. Mason's gun shifted a fraction. Mason said quietly. Griffin looked at him. Do not. Roman's voice was lower than the thunder outside. Who did you speak to? Griffin's jaw tightened. No one. Mason stepped closer. They hit the back entrance 2 minutes after you checked it. I said it was hot because it was hot. And the east camera went dead right after you switched posts. Griffin's eyes flashed. You think I sold him out? Nobody answered. The betrayal did not enter the room like a shout. It moved in quietly like smoke under a door. Roman stared at Griffin for a long moment. Evie saw it then. Not doubt, pain. Roman loved his men in the only language he seemed to know: trust, orders, shared danger, silence. Griffin had been inside that language. Now every word was breaking. Another explosion hit the front of the house. The floor shook. Books fell from the shelves. Maya screamed from inside the passage. Roman lifted his gun. Move. Griffin stepped into his path. We need to split. Roman's eyes sharpened. Get out of my way. Griffin looked past him to Evie. Something changed in his face. Evie saw it before anyone else did. Not guilt. Warning. Griffin raised his gun toward her. Mason shouted Griffin. Roman moved, but Griffin was faster. The shot filled the library. Evie felt the impact like a hard fist below her ribs. Her body folded backward. Roman caught her before she hit the floor. For 1 second there was no sound. Only Roman's face above hers. White. Hollow. Destroyed. Evie. She tried to breathe. Pain flared through her side, hot and shocking. Her hand moved instinctively to the wound and came away red. Too red. Roman pressed one hand over it. No, look at me. His voice cracked. Mason slammed Griffin against the wall. Griffin did not fight back. He dropped the gun. Maya appeared in the hidden doorway, saw the blood, and made a sound Evie would remember for the rest of her life. Roman lifted Evie into his arms. Stay with me. Her head fell against his chest. The room blurred. Then his mouth came close to her ear, so close no one else could hear. Do not move unless I tell you. Evie's mind struggled through the pain. Roman's hand pressed hard at her side. His thumb moved once against her ribs. A signal. Not comfort. Signal. She looked at his face. His grief was real. So was the command beneath it. Mason dragged Griffin toward the hall, shouting curses that sounded too raw to be staged. Maya sobbed. The judge prayed under his breath. Roman carried Evie through the library and back toward the entry hall, not the passage. Rain blew through the shattered windows. Men outside fired again. Roman stepped into view, holding Evie's limp body against him, her white dress soaked red. His voice ripped through the storm. Kane. The gunfire slowed. A figure moved beyond the broken doorway, surrounded by armed men. Derek Kane stood beneath a black umbrella, wearing a dark overcoat, his pale face lit by lightning. He smiled when he saw Evie. So the Bellamy girl bleeds after all. Roman held her tighter. Evie let her head hang, eyes barely open. Every instinct screamed at her to move, to gasp, to fight. She stayed still. Roman's voice was low enough to chill the room. You did this. Kane looked toward Griffin, who stood at the edge of the hall with Mason's gun pressed to his back. Family disappoints. Men disappoint. Blood disappoints most of all. Roman's breathing changed. Evie could feel it against her cheek. The grief in him was not acting. It pulsed through his body like a second heart. Kane took one step closer. Hand over the ledgers and what is left of the Bellamy accounts. I may let you bury her before sunrise. Roman looked down at Evie. His thumb brushed the ring on her finger. Then he raised his eyes. You should have killed me first. Kane's smile faded. Roman turned sharply and fired at the chandelier above the entry hall. The ancient fixture crashed down in a storm of glass and metal. At the same moment, Mason shoved Griffin into the wall and fired toward the porch. Men shouted. The room erupted. Roman carried Evie back through the side corridor as bullets tore through the plaster behind them. At the library entrance, he lowered his mouth to her ear. Now, Evie sucked in one desperate breath. The wound was not a wound. The impact had been real, but beneath the blood and torn fabric was a small metal plate strapped under the dress hidden against her side. The blood came from a burst pouch tucked into the seam. Griffin's shot had struck exactly where Roman had planned it would, or almost exactly. The force had bruised her ribs so badly she could barely breathe. Roman pushed open the hidden passage and carried her inside. Maya stared at Evie, shaking. She is alive. Roman did not slow. She stays dead. Mason came in behind them, dragging Griffin by the collar. Once inside the passage, he released him. Griffin bent over, breathing hard. Evie looked at him through tears. His eyes met hers. "I am sorry," he said. Her voice came out thin. "You shot me. Not where it counts." Maya slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked down the passage. Griffin accepted it. Mason looked at Roman. They bought it. Roman kept moving. For how long? Long enough if the charges are set. Evie's stomach dropped. Charges. Roman did not look at her. The lower cellar. The weapons room. The east foundation. "You are blowing up the house. It is already gone." The words hit her harder than the staged bullet. Bellamy house with its portraits and secrets, with her mother's younger face watching from the wall, with the hidden room that finally told the truth, was about to be erased. Evie wanted to protest. Then she heard Kane's men above them, boots crossing the library, voices shouting for the passage. Roman set her down inside the tunnel for 1 second and cupped her face. "Can you walk?" Yes. It was half lie, half promise. Her ribs screamed as she stood. Roman kept one arm around her waist. This time she did not push him away. Mason led with a flashlight. Maya followed with the judge. Griffin took the rear gun, drawn blood running from his temple into one eye. The tunnel sloped downward, then curved beneath the house. The old stone walls sweated cold water. The wedding dress dragged against dirt and rock. Evie gathered the ruined fabric in one hand and forced her legs to move. Above them, the house shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Roman's hand tightened at her waist. Faster. They reached a fork. Mason stopped. Boathouse or cliff road? Roman looked at Evie. For once, he did not answer first. Evie remembered the map. The old Bellamy lines. The route marked by a black curve below the west wall. "Boathouse," she said. "The cliff road exits too close to the gate." Roman nodded. They turned left. Behind them, metal clanged. Kane's men had found the passage. Griffin fired 3 times into the dark. Someone yelled. Mason pulled Maya forward. The tunnel opened at last into a low chamber beneath the boathouse. The smell of salt and fuel rushed in. Rain hammered the roof above. A speedboat waited in the water engine, low and ready. Evie stared at it. Mason helped the judge in first, then Maya. Griffin climbed aboard and took the stern, still covering the tunnel. Roman turned to Mason. "Take them north. Switch cars at Camden. The plane waits in Bangor." Evie looked at him. "The plane?" Roman did not answer. She understood before he said it. "Number." His face changed. "Evie." "Number." The house above them groaned. Somewhere deep inside the walls, a timer began to beep. Mason looked away. Evie grabbed Roman's jacket. "You are coming with me." "I cannot." "You mean you will not?" He held her wrists gentle and firm. "If I leave, Kane knows you are alive. He saw me bleeding in your arms. He saw what I needed him to see. But if I vanish with you, he questions everything. Then let him question." Roman's eyes burned into hers. "He will hunt you through every city in this country. He is already hunting me. Not if he believes he watched you die." The beeping grew faster. Evie shook her head. "You do not get to marry me, fake my death, and send me away in the same night." A broken smile touched his mouth and vanished. "I know. You said I had a choice. You did. This does not feel like one." Roman looked at her as if every word cut. "I'm sorry." She hated those words more than any command he had ever given. Behind them, Griffin fired again. "They are coming." Mason started the boat engine fully. The sound filled the boathouse. Maya reached for Evie. "Please." Evie did not move. Roman pulled a folder from inside his jacket and pressed it into her hands. "New identification. Cash. Accounts under your control. Clinic paperwork, everything clean." Evie stared at the folder. "You planned this before the wedding." "I planned every way to keep you alive, except asking me." His silence was worse than an argument. The beeping became frantic. Roman gripped the sides of her face. "Listen to me. You are Evelyn Carter. You are not Bellamy property. You are not Hale property. You are not Kane's prize. You are my wife, and I am asking you to live long enough to decide you hate me." Her eyes filled. "What if I do not hate you?" His face broke for 1 second. Only one. Then he kissed her. not like the ceremony. Not careful. This kiss was grief apology, hunger, and goodbye all at once. Evie clung to him with both hands, the folder crushed between them. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. "Seattle," he whispered. "Jenna will be contacted when it is safe. Trust no one else until Mason says." "I trust you." The words came out before she could stop them. Roman closed his eyes. "That is why I have to stay." Mason grabbed Evie around the waist and pulled her onto the boat. She fought him. "Roman." Roman stepped back onto the dock. Rain blew in behind him. Smoke curled through the tunnel entrance. Griffin untied the line and jumped aboard as Mason reversed. Evie reached over the side. Roman stood in the boathouse doorway framed by storm and firelight. Then the world exploded. Bellamy House lifted into the night with a roar that swallowed the ocean. Flame burst through the roof. Windows blew outward. Stone cracked. The old mansion that had guarded a century of secrets tore itself apart against the black sky. The force slammed through the boathouse. The boat lurched hard. Maya cried out. Evie hit the side rail and pain flashed through her ribs. Roman disappeared behind fire and smoke. "Number." Her voice broke open. "Number." Mason held the wheel steady as debris struck the water around them. Evie tried to stand, but Griffin caught her shoulders. He got clear. "You do not know that." Griffin's jaw tightened. "I know Roman." The boat shot out from beneath the boathouse and into the open water. Rain struck Evie's face. Salt spray soaked the ruined wedding dress. Behind them, Bellamy House burned on the cliff like a dying star. Evie watched until the flames blurred. She did not know if it was rain or tears. On the shore above Roman Hale stood hidden behind a wall of smoke, one hand braced against a broken stone pillar, blood running down his temple. He watched the boat vanish into the storm. Mason would keep her alive. Griffin would carry the lie. Maya would be hidden before dawn. The judge would forget everything he was paid to forget. Kane would find pieces of ivory fabric, burned blood, and enough remains to believe the Bellamy girl had died in the blast. Roman wiped blood from his mouth and turned back toward the ruins. Derek Kane's men were shouting in the dark. Some were wounded, some were trapped, some were already running. Roman picked up a fallen gun from the mud. His wedding ring was slick with rain and ash. Mason's voice crackled through the earpiece. "We have her." Roman looked toward the black ocean. For a moment, the mask slipped. His face emptied of everything except pain. Then he put the mask back on. "Keep her dead," he said. He removed the earpiece and walked into the smoke. By dawn, the official story had already begun to write itself. An explosion at an abandoned coastal estate. Suspected gas leak. Several unidentified casualties. A wealthy Boston businessman injured but alive. His new wife, Evelyn Carter Hale, presumed dead. No body recovered whole enough to challenge the story. Harbor Point woke to siren smoke and whispered names. Bellamy, Hale, Kane. By sunrise, men who had ignored Roman's calls for months answered on the first ring. By noon, old loyalties stirred. By nightfall, Derek Kane understood the mistake he had made. He had not killed Roman Hale's wife. He had created a ghost and left Roman with nothing soft enough to restrain him. Far north of the coast, Evie sat in the back of a black car, wrapped in Mason's coat, the ruined wedding dress stuffed into a duffel bag at her feet. Maya slept against the window, exhausted from crying. Griffin drove with one hand on the wheel and the other pressed to his bandaged side. Mason sat beside Evie. He had not spoken for an hour. Evie stared at the ring on her finger. Blood had dried beneath it. Roman's blood, maybe. Hers. Fake blood, real blood. She could no longer tell the difference. Mason finally said, "You should take it off before the airport." Evie did not look at him. "Number." "Evie. Number." Her voice was raw, but it held. Mason sighed and handed her a thin silver chain. "Then wear it where no one can see." She took the chain. Her hands shook as she slid the ring from her finger. The absence felt immediate, physical, like a door closing inside her chest. She threaded the ring onto the chain and clasped it around her neck. The metal rested against her skin, hidden, not gone. At a private airstrip outside Bangor, the plane waited with its lights on in the rain. Maya hugged Evie so tightly she could barely breathe. "I do not understand any of this," Maya whispered. Evie closed her eyes. "Neither do I." "Are you really dead now?" Evie looked toward Mason. He did not answer. That was answer enough. Maya's face crumpled. Evie touched her cheek. "Live like I am." Maya shook her head. "I just found you. I know." The words nearly broke her. Mason guided Evie toward the plane before grief could pull her apart completely. At the steps, Griffin stopped her. His face was bruised, one eye swollen, his temple stitched badly under a strip of gauze. "I did not want to do it," he said. Evie looked at him. The memory of the shot moved through her body. The impact. Roman's face, Maya screaming. "I know. That does not make it better." "No," she said, "it does not." He nodded once. Then she climbed into the plane. The cabin was small, quiet, warm. A woman Evie did not know handed her a blanket and asked no questions. Mason sat across from her as the plane began to move. Evie looked out the window. Rain streaked the glass. Somewhere behind her, Roman was alive or dead wounded, or fighting, grieving, or becoming the thing everyone already feared. She pressed her hand to the ring beneath her shirt. Her throat hurt. Her ribs hurt. Her lip hurt. But none of it reached the place where he had kissed her goodbye. As the plane lifted into the gray morning, Evie Carter watched Maine disappear beneath the clouds. By the time the coast vanished, Evelyn Carter Hale was dead. The woman breathing in her seat had a new name, a folder full of lies, and a heart that had been left burning on a cliff above the Atlantic. Seattle taught Evie how to disappear in plain sight. Rain softened the edges of everything there. Buildings vanished into low clouds. Strangers passed each other with hoods up and eyes down. The water was always close gray and restless, but it did not sound like the Atlantic. It did not hit cliffs with teeth. It moved under bridges, against piers, around ferries, carrying people who never looked twice at a woman with a new name and old grief hidden under her collar. For the first few months, Evie barely slept. She rented a small apartment above a bookstore in Queen Anne under the name Evie Carter. The windows faced a narrow street lined with wet maples. At night, headlights moved across her ceiling like searchlights. Every slam of a car door made her sit up. Every footstep in the hall turned her blood cold. Mason had stayed 3 weeks. He stalked the apartment, checked the locks, changed them twice, walked the block each morning before she opened the blinds. He said little unless she asked. One night, while rain tapped against the kitchen window, Evie found him sitting at her table with a gun beside his coffee. "Is he alive?" she asked. Mason did not look up. Yes, the answer should have helped. It ruined her instead. Alive meant choosing not to come. Alive meant somewhere Roman Hale was breathing while she learned to live as his dead wife. She pressed one hand to the ring beneath her shirt. "Is he hurt?" Mason took a slow breath. "Always." That was the last honest thing he gave her before he left. After Mason disappeared, Jenna came. Evie had not seen her best friend since Chicago, since before Maine, before Bellamy House, before Roman walked into her life and turned every locked room inside her into a place with smoke under the door. Jenna arrived late on a Friday, soaked from the airport taxi and furious enough to cry. The moment Evie opened the apartment door, Jenna pulled her into her arms. "You were dead?" Jenna whispered. Evie stood frozen. Then her body broke before her mind could stop it. She clung to Jenna in the doorway and sobbed into her wet coat. For 3 days, Jenna stayed on the couch and asked only the questions Evie could answer. Did anyone know where she was? Number. Was Roman alive? Yes. Was he safe? Evie did not know. Was she in love with him? Evie washed a mug for so long the water ran cold. Jenna did not ask again. By spring, Evie opened a small trauma clinic near the waterfront. It sat on the 3rd floor of an old brick building with green trim and fogged windows. The office had 2 chairs, a low table, shelves of books, and a view of Elliott Bay. She chose soft lamps over ceiling lights. She bought plants she was not sure she could keep alive. She hung no personal photographs. Clients came slowly at first. A woman who could not sleep after a home invasion. A man who flinched when his wife touched his shoulder. A college student who laughed whenever she spoke about pain. Evie listened. She helped them name what the body remembered. She taught breathing techniques, grounding exercises, ways to return to the room after the past grabbed them by the throat. Her clients thought she was calm. They trusted that calm. They did not know she kept a packed bag in the closet. They did not know she checked the reflection in dark windows before unlocking her car. They did not know she wore her wedding ring on a chain beneath silk blouses and high-neck sweaters pressed against the place where bruises had once darkened her skin. Sometimes during sessions a client would say something that opened a door inside her. "I knew he was dangerous," one woman said, twisting a tissue in her hands. "But when he looked at me, I felt seen." Evie's pen stopped. Outside the window, rain blurred the city. She kept her voice even. Being seen can feel like safety when you have spent a long time being invisible. The woman nodded. Evie wrote nothing. That night she took the ring from under her shirt and placed it on the bathroom counter. Roman's ring looked simple under the light. A gold band, no stone, no ornament. It had no business carrying so much weight. She stared at it until her eyes burned. Then she put it back on the chain. Hidden, not gone. A year passed in pieces. Rainy mornings. Client notes. Takeout cartons. Phone calls from Jenna. Silence from Maine. Silence from Roman. Evie learned the shape of absence. It did not stay sharp forever. It became weather. Some days light, some days unbearable. On the anniversary of Bellamy house burning, she woke before dawn with her hand around the ring and the taste of smoke in her mouth. She showered, dressed in a cream blouse and dark trousers, pinned her hair back, and walked to the clinic through cold rain. Her first client canceled. Her second cried for 40 minutes. Her third did not show. At noon, her assistant Laura knocked softly on the door. "You have a new intake at 1. Evie looked up from her notes. "I thought my schedule was closed." It was. He said he was referred privately. "What is his name?" Laura glanced at the tablet. "Nathan Blackwell." Evie's fingers went still around her pen. There was no reason for the name to mean anything. It meant nothing. Still, something inside her lifted its head. Did he fill out the paperwork? Bare minimum. No emergency contact. Paid cash for the session. Evie looked toward the window. A ferry moved across the bay, half hidden in mist. "Cancel it." Laura blinked. "Are you sure?" Evie opened her mouth, then stopped. She was tired of running from shadows that might not have bodies. "No," she said. "Keep it." At 1 o'clock exactly, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Not rushed, not hesitant, measured. Evie stood behind her desk. The office door opened. Roman Hale stepped inside. For a moment, the world lost sound. He wore a dark overcoat, rain on his shoulders, hair shorter than it had been in Maine. There was a faint scar near his temple that had not been there before. His face looked leaner, harder, tired in a way power could not hide. But his eyes were the same. Storm glass. Evie's hand went to the ring beneath her blouse before she could stop it. Roman saw the movement. Something moved across his face, gone almost instantly. He closed the door behind him with care. "Dr. Carter." Her voice came out quieter than she wanted. "That is not your name. Number. You made an appointment." "Yes." "You paid cash." "I did." "You waited a year and booked a therapy session under a fake name." His mouth almost curved, but grief stopped it. "You had a wait list." Anger hit her so fast she nearly laughed. "You could have called. Would you have answered?" She hated that the question had weight. She moved around the desk slowly, needing space, needing the desk between them gone, and regretting it when it was. "You do not get to walk in here like a patient." Roman looked around the room. The plants, the books, the 2 chairs, the rain-streaked windows. "This is a good office. Do not do that." His eyes returned to her. "What?" "Look proud of me." His face changed. A small wound opening behind the eyes. "I am proud of you." Evie's breath trembled. "Number." She pointed toward the chair. "You wanted an appointment. Sit." Roman obeyed. That unsettled her almost as much as his arrival. The Roman she knew filled rooms by refusing to bend. This man sat because she told him to. Evie remained standing. For several seconds they listened to the rain. Then she said, "Is Kane dead?" "Yes." "Ethan Vale?" "Yes." "Your men." "Mason is alive. Griffin is alive. Maya is safe." Evie closed her eyes at Maya's name. Roman continued. "She thinks you died. She grieved you." Evie opened her eyes. Pain moved under her ribs. "You let her." "I had to." "No, you chose to." Roman accepted that without defense. "Yes." That single word made her angrier. She wanted him to argue, to command, to give her the old Roman, the one she could push against. Instead, he sat there in her office, wet from the rain, carrying the weight of a year in silence. Evie crossed her arms. "What happened after I left?" Roman looked toward the window. "Kane believed you died in the blast. For 3 days, he celebrated. On the 4th, Griffin reached him as a defector. He gave him pieces of truth, enough to be believed, enough to poison every room Kane entered." Evie sat slowly in the chair across from him. Roman's gaze flicked to the movement, then back to her face. Ethan was the first to break. He had been feeding Kane roots the safe house's names. He thought Kane would give him Harbor Point after I was gone. "Did you kill him?" A silence. "Yes." Evie swallowed. She had expected the answer. It still hurt. Roman watched her carefully. "I will not make it prettier than it was." "Good." Kane lasted longer. He had judges, police, ports, men in 3 states. He had people who hated me enough to die for him and people who feared me enough to lie. I spent months taking away both. How? Money, pressure, testimony, fire when required. Evie looked at him. Fire when required. His eyes did not move. "Yes." She leaned back. "The world you live in is monstrous. I know. And you are part of it. Yes. And you came here because you think the war being over fixes what you did to me." Roman's jaw tightened. "Number. Then why are you here?" His hands rested on his knees. Still, open. No weapon visible. No ring on his finger. That hurt before she could protect herself from it. Roman saw her notice. He reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table between them. His wedding ring. "I took it off when it helped the lie," he said. "I put it back on when I was alone." Evie stared at the band. Her throat closed. "I wore mine every day," she said before she could stop herself. Roman's control broke for 1 second. He looked down. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I know." Her eyes snapped to his. "How?" Mason told me. A bitter laugh left her. "Of course he did. I asked once. Then I stopped asking because knowing you still wore it made it harder to stay away." Evie stood. "You do not get sympathy for self-restraint after you erased me." Roman stood too, but he stayed where he was. "You are right. I woke up in a city I did not choose, under a name I did not choose with money. I did not ask for grieving a man who made every decision and called it love." Roman's face paled. Evie's voice shook, but she did not stop. "You married me in a storm. You kissed me under my mother's portrait. You put me on a boat covered in fake blood and told the world I died. You let my cousin mourn me. You let my best friend think I was dead until it was convenient. You broke my life into pieces because you thought your fear mattered more than my consent." Roman did not speak. "Say something," she snapped. He looked at her. "I was wrong." The words were quiet. No armor, no excuse. Evie's anger faltered because she had expected a fight and found surrender instead. Roman continued. "I was wrong to decide for you. I was wrong to call it protection when part of it was terror. I saw you on that dock with his hand around your throat and something in me went blind. After that, every choice I made had one purpose. Keep you breathing. I did not ask whether the life I saved would still feel like yours." Evie looked away. Rain tapped against the glass like fingers asking to be let in. Roman's voice lowered. "I cannot undo it. Number. I cannot make the year smaller. Number. I cannot become a harmless man." Evie turned back to him. There it was. The truth neither of them could soften. Roman Hale could apologize. He could ask. He could change the way he held her, but he could not become ordinary. And Evie, who had spent her life wanting ordinary because ordinary seemed safe, no longer believed safety was the same thing as peace. "What do you want?" she asked. Roman's answer came without hesitation. "You." Her chest hurt. "That is not enough. I know. What else? To know you. Without a locked room. Without a war outside. Without turning every fear into an order." Evie's eyes burned. "And if I say no?" Roman's face tightened, but he nodded. "Then I leave this office and do not come back unless you call." She searched his face for the lie. She did not find it. "You would do that." "No," he said softly. "I would want to come back every day. I would want to stand across the street like a criminal and count your lights. I would want to burn this city down for keeping you from me." Evie's breath caught. Roman held her gaze. "But I would leave." The honesty cut deeper than a promise. Evie walked to the window. Below, people crossed the wet street under umbrellas. Normal lives. Coffee cups, phone calls, lunch breaks. A woman laughing as she stepped around a puddle. Evie pressed her fingertips to the glass. "I hated you," she said. "I know. I defended you to myself, then hated myself for it." Roman said nothing. "I missed you so much it felt humiliating." His reflection stood behind her in the window, still and silent. She turned. "I am not the woman you handed address to. Number. I will not be moved around like a piece on your board. I know. If there is danger, I hear the truth. Yes. If you want something from me, you ask. Yes. If I say, stop, you stop." Pain crossed his face, old and deserved. "Yes." Evie touched the ring under her blouse. "And you go to therapy." Roman blinked once. "What?" "You heard me." "For what?" "For the part of you that thinks love and control are the same language." He stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, his mouth softened. "With you? No, absolutely not." A quiet laugh moved through him. Small, rusty, almost unfamiliar. The sound hit Evie in the chest. She had not known how badly she missed his laugh because she had barely heard it before. Roman looked at her as if the sound had surprised him too. "I will go," he said. She studied him. "You hate that." "Yes." "Good." His eyes warmed careful and sad. "There she is." Evie should have warned him not to look at her like that. Instead, she crossed the room. Roman did not move. That mattered. He did not reach first, did not close the last inch, did not take what fear, longing, and history had already placed between them. He waited. Evie stopped in front of him. For a long moment, she looked at the man who had ruined her life and saved it. The man who had lied and bled and burned down a mansion to keep her breathing. The man who now stood in her office with empty hands asking, without speaking. She lifted the chain from beneath her blouse. The ring caught the gray light. Roman's eyes dropped to it. His face changed in a way she had no defense against. Evie unclasped the chain and slid the ring into her palm. "I kept it hidden," she said. His voice was barely audible. "I see that. I was angry every time I touched it. I deserve that. I touched it anyway." Roman looked at her then. Evie took his hand. His breath caught when she placed the ring in his palm. For one terrible second, he thought she was giving it back. Then she extended her left hand. "Ask me this time." Roman went completely still. Evie's heart pounded, not with fear, with choice. His fingers closed around the ring. Slowly, Roman lowered himself to one knee on the office floor. Outside, rain slid down the windows. Inside, the city fell away. He looked up at her, no power left between them, except the kind freely given. "Evelyn Carter," he said, voice rough with everything he could not hide. "Can I come back into your life?" Evie's eyes filled. "Not as my keeper. Number. Not as my savior. Number. Not as my owner." Roman's jaw tightened. "Never." She breathed once slowly. "As my husband." His eyes shone. "If you still want me." Evie looked at him kneeling in the office she had built from grief, rain, and survival. Then she said, "I do." Roman slid the ring onto her finger. This time it did not feel like a lock. It felt like a door opening from the inside. He stood slowly, still waiting. Evie stepped into him. The kiss was not like Maine. There was no storm breaking windows, no gunfire, No blood beneath lace. No men shouting in the hall. It was quiet. That made it more dangerous. Roman touched her face with both hands, careful around bruises that were no longer there. Evie felt the memory of them anyway. She also felt his restraint, the trembling in his fingers, the way he held himself back, even as she leaned closer. She pulled away first. His forehead rested against hers. "I missed you," he whispered. Evie closed her eyes. "I know." A soft knock sounded at the office door. They separated. Laura's voice came through. "Dr. Carter, your next client is here." Evie looked at Roman. For the first time in a year, she almost smiled without pain. Roman stepped back and picked up his coat. "I can wait." Evie raised one eyebrow. "You can." His mouth curved. "I am learning." She opened the door. Laura looked from Evie to Roman, then wisely looked at her tablet. "Everything okay?" Evie touched the ring on her finger. For the first time in a long time, she said maybe. Roman waited in the hall while Evie saw her next client. 40 minutes later, she found him near the window at the end of the corridor looking out at the bay. He had not left. He had not paced. He had simply waited. When he saw her, he straightened. Evie walked past him. "Come on." "Where?" "Coffee." His eyes warmed. "American coffee." She glanced back. "You are in Seattle. Insult coffee here and someone will arrest you." Roman followed her into the elevator. On the street, the rain had softened to mist. They walked side by side toward a small cafe on the corner. For half a block, neither touched the other. Then Roman's hand shifted near hers. He stopped himself. Evie saw. She reached for him. Their fingers locked. Roman looked down at their joined hands like he had been given something breakable and holy. Evie squeezed once. "Do not make it weird." His smile appeared slowly. "I would not dare." Months later, Harbor Point looked smaller than Evie remembered. The road to Mariner's Rise had been repaired, but Bellamy House was gone. Only part of the stone foundation remained blackened at the edges, softened now by weeds and seagrass. Wildflowers grew where the entry hall had been. The cliff still stood. The ocean still struck the rocks below. Roman drove in silence. Evie sat beside him, watching the coastline rise through the windshield. Her ring was on her hand now, visible. When they reached the rebuilt dock, Maya was already there. She stood near the steps, hair whipping in the wind, one hand pressed to her mouth. Evie got out of the car. For 1 second, neither woman moved. Then Maya ran. The impact of the hug nearly knocked Evie backward. Maya held her so tightly Evie could barely breathe, crying and laughing at the same time. "You were dead," Maya said against her shoulder. "I know. I mourned you. I know. I'm so mad at you. I know." Maya pulled back and slapped Evie's arm, then hugged her again. Roman stood near the car, giving them space. Maya looked over Evie's shoulder at him. I am mad at you too." Roman nodded. "You should be." Maya pointed at him. "I will get to you later." "Yes, ma'am." Evie almost laughed. Mason appeared near the dock, hands in his coat pockets, pretending his eyes were not wet. Griffin stood farther back with a scar along his cheek and a guilty smile he had not earned yet. Evie walked to Mason first. He looked at her for a long moment. "Good to see you alive, Mrs. Hale." She hugged him. He froze, then carefully hugged her back. Griffin waited. Evie approached him slowly. He looked down. "I still owe you an apology." "Yes," she said. "I am sorry." "I know. I would do it again to keep you alive." "I know that too." She touched the scar on his cheek lightly. "I am still mad." He nodded. "Fair." The afternoon settled around them. Wind moved over the cliff. The rebuilt dock stretched into calmer water than the night she left. The Atlantic looked almost blue under the sun. Evie walked to the end of the dock alone. Roman joined her after a moment, stopping at her side. No one spoke for a while. Below, water moved against the pilings. Evie looked toward the empty space where the house had been. "I thought coming back would hurt more." Roman's gaze stayed on the sea. "Does it?" "Yes," she said, "but not the way I expected." He turned to her. Evie touched the ring on her finger. "My mother ran from this place. I understand why. But I think she also left me pieces of herself here because she hoped one day I would be strong enough to look at them. Roman was quiet. Then he reached into his coat pocket. Evie saw the small velvet box and narrowed her eyes. Careful, Hale. His mouth curved. No hourglass this time. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, silver with a small pale stone that caught the light like sea glass. Evie stared at it. "We are already married," she said. "Yes. Twice, apparently, if you count legal trauma." His smile deepened. "I am asking for the version without gunfire." Behind them, Maya gasped. Mason muttered something under his breath. Evie did not look back. Roman lowered himself to one knee on the rebuilt dock. The wind moved through his dark hair. Sunlight touched the scar near his temple. For once, the ocean behind him looked less like a threat and more like a beginning. "Evelyn Carter Hale," he said, "marry me again, here, in daylight. With people you love watching, with every door open." Evie's throat tightened. "Ask properly." His eyes warmed. "Will you marry me again?" Evie looked at the man kneeling before her, then at the water that had once carried her away from him. This time nothing dragged her into the dark. This time no one placed a dress in her hands and called it survival. This time she chose. "Yes," she said. Maya shouted behind them. Mason cleared his throat. Griffin clapped once, then stopped when Maya hit his arm. Roman rose and slid the new ring beside the old one. Evie took his face in her hands and kissed him under the open sky. The Atlantic moved beneath them. The ruins stood behind them. And for the first time, Evie did not feel like a woman running from a name, a house, a man, or a past. She stood at the edge of the water with her hand in Roman's, looking toward the horizon. Not safe in the old way. Not untouched. Not unafraid. Alive. Chosen. Free.